So let's restart from here. A little bit past the halfway mark. Zok Hel Gemara, Boyer Kananya. Yesh Tchumen Lamayla Me'asara, or Ein Tchumen Lamayla Me'asara. Just like by Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah is only up to 10 tefachim from the floor. Above 10 tefachim from the floor, you're in a Rosh Hashanah. So what about the Gabat Tchumen? That is an issue to go more than 2,000 amas. Does that apply also if you're above 10 from the ground? So Amud Gavaya Asar V'Rachav Arba, if you have a platform that's 10 tefachim high, that's 4 tefachim wide, and it's right on the border between your 2,000 amas. And when you get to that area, you go up on top of that platform, and then you come down the other side. That's for sure also. That's for sure also. Since it's a proper place where you can stand, it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. We look at it like a hill, like just the normal terrain of the property. And then, of course, the 10 tefachim that we would count would be from the top of that platform. If you're on that platform, it's as if you're standing on land. Kita boilach, our question of someone who's traversing the tchum when he's above an altitude of 10 tefachim, that's ba'amud gavoya asar. You have a post that's 10 tefachim high, but it's not 4 tefachim wide, so it's not like an independent place. So that when you climb on that, you're actually 10 tefachim above the ground, because we don't consider the top of that post the ground. So you're crossing the tchum and you're not within 10 from the ground. Or if you flew over the tchum, Rashi says b'shem, you actually used a shem and you were able to fly over. Or if you were a good jumper, you could jump over. So the point is that when you cross the tchum, you're not within 10 tefachim of the ground. Now this shaila would have two nafkaminas. The first nafkamina would be exactly this case. Are you over leaving the tchum if you leave the tchum above 10 tefachim? But it would have a different nafkamina, and that is if you're above 10 when Shabbos arrives, so you weren't going to shvisa anywhere, when you come down into the tchum, into the less than 10 tefachim, that's when you're going to shvisa. If you hold tchumen or lamala me'asar, it doesn't matter where you are, that's where you're going to be. Wherever you are, no matter if you're high up in the air or on the ground, wherever you are, that's where you're going to shvisa for Shabbos. However, if you hold there's no tchumen lamala me'asar, then if you're in the air, when Shabbos arrives, your shvisa will not be established until you come to within 10 tefachim of the ground. Zok the Gemara weiter. Lish nachrina. Another nachrina you would make is besvina. If you were in a ship, and the ship, the bottom of the ship, was more than 10 tefachim from the bottom of the lake, so you're above 10 tefachim from the floor, from the lake floor. That's one pshat. What will be the halacha? Mai. Amar B'Yishia Toshma. Mai sheshabo mipalanderson. So we're quoting the same story that we had in our Mishnah. People were coming on the ship from Palanderson, the Fligas Finasan Bayom, and Rabbi Kiva was there, Rabbi Shua was there, and the ship left on Shabbos. In Amrit B'Shlema Yesh Tchumen, if you hold that there's Tchumen, Mishum Hachi Ratzu. So they were actually, they might not have left on Shabbos, they actually left during the week, and on Shabbos, they wanted to know if they're allowed to walk around the ship. And Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Gamliel, allowed them to walk all about the ship. But Rabbi Shua Kiva says you may not walk around the ship. So the question is, why wouldn't you be able to walk around the ship? The only possible reason that you wouldn't be able to walk around the ship would be because you're Kodesh Shvisa there, and that's your place. So Kum D'Chai is beautiful. If you hold that the halachas of tchumen apply, even though you're above 10 tefachim, that's why they wanted to be macher on themselves, because there's a question of tchumen there, and there's a question if they have more than dollar amas. But you could even enter into a discussion about whether or not it's much to them to walk around the ship or not, only if that's subject to tchumen when you're above 10 tefachim from the ground. If you hold when you're above 10 tefachim from the ground, there's no such thing as tchumen. What's the whole shaila? Everybody should hold you can walk all around, because there's no tchumen. The halachas of tchumen wouldn't apply since they were above 10 tefachim from the ground. And for the Gemara, who said that ship was above 10 tefachim from the ground? Dilma Amarava the Malechas Berekek. Like Rav is going to answer to the next question that the Gemara is going to ask about a ship. That it's speaking where the ship was actually rubbing the bottom, it was hugging the bottom of the lake. And it was running in very shallow water to the point that it was actually touching the ground. So you were actually not 10 tefachim above the ground. Hachanami b'malechas b'rekek. So we can explain the reason why there was a discussion about Hilchos Tchumen being relevant on the ship is because the ship was not 10 tefachim above the ground. Tashma, let's bring another raya again from our Mishnah. They didn't reach the port until it was already Friday night. And the question was, can they leave the ship? And Gamliel pulled out his telescope and said, I'm able to tell that by the time Shabbos arrived, we were actually within 2,000 amas of the shore, and therefore we were in the Tchum. But if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have been able to leave. How could that be? If they were in the water above 10 Tvachim, then they wouldn't have any Hilchos Tchumen applied to them. Then it makes sense. If you all the Hilchos Tchumen do not apply when you're above 10 Tvachim on the ground, what's the difference if they're in the Tchum or not? They're not subject to Hilchos Tchumen when they're above 10 from the ground. This is the story that we quoted earlier. It's speaking where it's not deep, it's very shallow water. The bottom of the ship is actually touching the ground, which means that you were within 10 Tvachim on the ground. But avad, if you're in the middle of the ocean and there's plenty of water underneath the ship, avad, there's no problem with Tchumen on a ship because you're above 10. When I say avad, I mean according to the time of the Shaila. The Gemara has a Shaila whether or not above 10 there's din Tchumen. So what the Gemara means to say is that it would be a suffix. The suffix that the Gemara has, it would be in the ocean. Tashma. Hani Shav Shmaitza, there were 7 halachas regarding Hilchos Treifas that are discussed in Chulam. And what happened there was a very fascinating story. Is someone came to Rav Chisda and Surah, this Amron Bet Safer B'Shabbatos, one Shabbos morning, someone showed up, Kamed Rav Chisda and Surah, showed up in front of Rav Chisda and Surah, and he told them what the halacha is by these 7 different cases. And then, by the Pani B'Shabbat, that same afternoon, Kamed Rava B'Humadisa. This same person showed up in front of Rava and Humadisa. They were very far from each other, way out of the Tchum. So the question is, who was this person who traveled way past the Tchum on Shabbos? Man Amrinu, who was the one who said these halachas? Lav Eliyahu Amrinu, it would have had to be Eliyahu Hanavi. If it had to be Eliyahu Hanavi, that means he flew above 10. And that's how he was able to legally get from Surah to Pumadisa. Alma ein tchumen l'mayla me'asara. So you see, the Hilchos Tchumen do not apply when you're above 10 from the ground. You don't have a raya. Dilma Yosef Shida Minhu. Who said it was Eliyahu Novi who passed his halachas on, who clearly would have kept the halacha? Maybe it was Yosef the Shade, Rashi the Shabbos, so he didn't keep Shabbos. And maybe he was the one who delivered this information. So we have to ask a couple of interesting questions. Some Sefer asks. I don't understand. Forget these halachas. Doesn't Eliyahu Navi come to every bris? And there's many bris on Shabbos all over the world. Doesn't Eliyahu Navi come to every seder? Koshel Eliyahu. He's all over the world. So you see that he's able to travel around. Zogt, some Sefer, that there's 2 types of Gilu Eliyahu. There's the Gilu Eliyahu when you see a person in his flesh. When Eliyahu appears in his flesh as a human, there he's subject to all of the halachas of humans, and Tchumen would apply to him. And Vibalt in Pumadisa and Surah, where this Eliyahu met Rav Chisda and Rava, he came in the flesh. That's why he had to be subject to the halachas. Masha Enke, when Eliyahu comes to Arshadorim, and when Eliyahu comes to a bris, he doesn't come in his flesh. He comes spiritually. We don't see him. And under those conditions, he's not subject to the world, to the halachas of the world. And you need to say this, because how could Eliyahu come and tell us halacha? Even if a Baskel came from Shemayim, we don't listen. We pass him like Roiva, Rabam Lahatas. The teretz is, it depends on what form Eliyahu Novi comes. If Eliyahu Novi comes in flesh form, yes, he is one of us then. And therefore, he has to keep all the halachas, and he's nemon to say over what the psak halacha is. But when he's coming in a spiritual sense, in the Chanami, he wouldn't be able to tell us halachas at that point. and therefore, it's not a raya, it's not a kasha from bris and from a seder where Elio makes a spiritual appearance only. Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Gemara weiter. Tashma Hareni Nazir. A person said, "I want to be a Nazir when the Yom Shem Ben David Ba, the day that Mashiach comes." So since every day it's a suffix, if Mashiach will come today, he has to refrain from drinking wine. However, mutter lishtus yain b'shabbosos of Yom Tov. He's allowed to drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov because then Mashiach cannot come, and we'll see soon why. The Osir lishtos yain kol yom Yisachol. He's not allowed to drink wine all week long, like we said, because Mashiach can come any day. If you hold that we're limited by Hilchos Tchumen, that's why on Shabbos and Yom Tov it's mutter, because Mashiach can't come, he can't travel out of the Tchum. If you hold that there's no Hilchos Tchumen on Shabbos and Yom Tov, am I mutter? Why is it mutter to drink wine? Mashiach can come today because he's not subject to Hilchos Tchumen. And for the Gemara, Shiny Hasam, the Omar Kra, when it comes to Mashiach, there's a special pasuk that says, one of our favorite songs, Hine anochi shelech lechem es Eliyahu Navi, lifnei bo yom Hashem. I'm going to send Eliyahu Navi to announce the coming of Mashiach one day before. So therefore, on Shabbos, we know Mashiach's not going to come. You know why? Because since Eliyahu didn't come Friday, we can be sure that Mashiach will not come on Shabbos. And therefore, since we know Mashiach won't come on Shabbos, you don't have to keep your Hilchos Naziros. Gemara, if you're telling me that we always would know about the arrival of Mashiach a day before, because Eliyahu Navi comes to announce that, well then the Choil kol yomi v'yomi nami lishtiri. Every day I should be able to drink wine. When I said I'm only going to be a Nazir the day Mashiach comes, well every day, if Eliyahu didn't come the day before, I know Mashiach is not coming today. So why can I not drink wine every day? The reason why I can't drink wine every weekday is because maybe Eliyahu Navi did come. It just I didn't hear about it. Maybe Eliyahu came to Bezna Godel and gave the information over. I might be at the other end of the world, and I might not have heard that. So but if that's the case, then on Shabbos as well, why am I allowed to drink wine on Shabbos? Maybe Mashiach will come. Eliyahu didn't come on Friday. Maybe he did. I just didn't hear about it. Dr. Gemara, Kavar Muftach Lahem Yisrael, Klal Yisrael knows for sure, She'ein Eliyahu ba, loy ba'arvi Shabbosos, v'loy ba'arvi Yom Tovim, mipnei HaTorach. Eliyahu Navi will not come on Erev Shabbos and not on Erev Yom Tov because he's going to interrupt people that are busy preparing for Shabbos. And since he's going to interrupt people that are busy preparing for Shabbos, he won't want to stare the mitzvah of preparing for Shabbos, and he won't come. The Briskerov mentions over here, you see that Mashiach, when he comes, it's all by the book. He won't even risk violating something like interrupting someone from preparing for Shabbos. Even that he's not gonna bend. So at this point the Gemara thinks, if Eliyahu Navi would not come on a Friday because it's going to interrupt preparations for Shabbos, then Mashiach Nami lo yasi b'mal Shabbos. Then Mashiach won't either come. So if Mashiach cannot come on Friday, so then lishteri, let a person who says I only want to be a Nazir the day Mashiach will come, he should be able to drink wine on that Friday because Mashiach won't come on a Friday. The Gemara, Eliyahu lo yasi. Eliyahu doesn't come. Mashiach would come on a Friday. He's going to interrupt preparations for Shabbos. So tomorrow, even the Asi Mashiach, when Mashiach comes, Hakol Avodim Hein LiYisrael. Everybody's going to be an Eved. It's brought down in Chazal that when Mashiach comes, each Yid is going to have Shnei Alofim, Ushmoinem Me'as Avodim. We're going to have 2,800 Avodim. All the Goyim, when they see that Klal Yisrael is the chosen nation, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is the real Rebbeinu Shalom, they're going to be dying to connect to Klal Yisrael in any way possible. They'll all offer their labor services. So I recommend everybody go to Home Depot.
You won't have a problem with Black Lives Matter.
That's right. And it's interesting because I thought it would take time to develop. Mashiach will come and will become greater and will become well-known, Klal Yisrael, and slowly people are going to attach themselves to us. Here it's saying the moment Mashiach comes, bam, you're going to have 2,800 people knocking at your door. Mr. Kutner, what should we do for you? So you better go to Home Depot and stock up on plywood because you're going to have to find something for all these people to do. They're going to be knocking on your door looking for errands. So we got to prepare for them.
You feel the Mashiach will come with his private caterers or something, like we wouldn't have to worry about cooking. So that's what it is.
I guess you need wait staff. I don't know. So at least let people to be able to drink wine on Sunday because Elio cannot come on Shabbos because how is he going to travel out of the Tchum? Liv shot mina, the ain't Tchumen. Bring a raya from here that there's no Tchumen above 10 and Elio can fly above 10 to come here. The Yesh Tchumen, if there were Tchumen, which would prevent Elio Anovi from coming on Shabbos, the Chad b'Shabbat history. So then on Sunday we know Mashiach can't come, and therefore he should be able to drink wine. The Le'as Elio b'Shabbos, because Elio would not come on Shabbos if there's a din Tchumen. Elamai, you have a raya that there's no din Tchumen l'may l'mayasara. So if tomorrow, no, you can't bring me a raya that there's no din Tchumen l'may l'mayasara. At the most you can prove that it's a suffix. Haitana sefukim esavkli is a suffix. Yesh Tchumen ain't Tchumen. U'luchumra, and he goes l'chumra. So therefore, we have to be choshid that maybe there's no Tchum L'Mal Me'asara, and maybe Eliyahu Novi did come on Shabbos, and therefore I have to be concerned that Mashiach might arrive on Sunday, and therefore I'm not allowed to drink wine on Sunday. But if I have a question, can I go cross the Tchum when I'm above 10? Avad I can, because we suffer, you have to say that it's also. They ask the Kasha, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says that Mashiach's going to come, I think the Torah even asks it, either in Nisan or in Tishrei. So if that's the case, if I made this Naziris the day Mashiach, the Naziris should be called the day Mashiach comes. If it's not Nisan and Tishrei, why is there Naziris? So the Torah even says there's Be'ita Achishena. If Mashiach comes at his deadline, then it's going to be in Nisan or in Tishrei, and then it has all the rules. But Achishena, if we're Zoicha, that Mashiach should come earlier, then any day he can come. But
you may have talked about this.
What's the
Achak Aloi? What's the Achak
Aloi? Is because the Achishena. We're hoping that Mashiach will come. Hashem will send us Mashiach before the hard deadline, and we'll be zeicher to it earlier. And if he comes earlier, then he's not subject to all of these regulations. So Zok the Gemara, you have this fellow who said, "I'm going to be a Nazir the day Mashiach comes," and because of that, every day to suffer. So let's think, what day did this fellow say this? The Koi Emas the Kanadar. What day was it where this person made this neder? Ilema the Koi B'choil, if he was, let's say, on Thursday or Friday, well, Thursday or Friday, it will be Chal, the Naziris. Even the Chalal and Naziris, since he became a Nazir, so once he becomes a Nazir, it sticks. Hey, Yosy Shabta Umafkale. How could the Gemara say that on Shabbos and Yom Tov? How could the Bride say that on Shabbos and Yom Tov there's no din Naziris? It was Chal already before. Now that's not Rashi's graph. That's how a lot of people learn. Rashi learns that on Shabbos it would still be Osir because maybe Elio came on Friday and he didn't hear about it. Elo Zok the Gemara the Koi B'Shabbata. The only time the Brisa says that on Shabbos he's not a Nazir, on Yom Tov he's not a Nazir, is if that's the day that he was Makabel the Nazirs. The Koi B'Shabbata the Chanadar, or Yom Tov the Kanadar. Hu Yoima the Sharilei, and when he does say that, if he says on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, I'm going to be a Nazir, the day Mashiach comes, so on that day that he made his Naziris, he's not a Nazir because Mashiach cannot come that day. But the Kam Velach come the day after Yom Tov, come Sunday, Osirla, Avada, he becomes a full-fledged Nazir. So the whole Shiloh here is on that day where he made Naziris, if he made the Naziris on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, the Naziris will not be Chal until after Shabbos. Zok Gemara weiter. Pam Achas lo nichnu lomo. There was a story where they did not reach the port on Friday afternoon. By the time they reached the port, it was Friday night. And the question was, they asked Rabbi Gamliel, are we allowed to disembark the ship? And the Gamliel said, I have my special telescope, and I was able to verify that we were within 2,000 amas of the coast before Shabbos, which means we were in the Tchum. So therefore, you're allowed to leave the ship. So Tana, what type of tool is this? Gamliel had some type of telescope without lenses. When he would look in it, he would set up a pre-measured distance of 2,000 amas, and then he would look in his scope, and it would actually see just that. So that's how we knew that this scope measured the distance of 2,000 amas. That's how it worked. Now, Rashi has, this is one of the pshat in Rashi. I don't understand how the length of that tube that you look through, how that will impact how far you see. I understand that it'll impact the range, the width, or if it'll just be a pin, like a laser beam that you see. But how is it that you don't see more than 2,000 amas? I don't understand how it works. But Rashi offers another pshat, a very fascinating pshat. Rashi holds you create a right triangle. So let's say what you do is you set up a platform that, let's say, 12 inches long, okay, and then the vertical you set up an L bracket. So the part that plants on the floor is 12 inches long. Then the vertical would be, let's say, 4 feet long. So you have now a right triangle that's 4 feet by 1 foot, which means if you want to know the length of the hypotenuse, it's a squared plus b squared. So 16 plus 1 is 17. The square root of 17 would be the length of the hypotenuse. Okay. Now what he would do is he would put his scope exactly in line with the hypotenuse, which means when he looked through his scope, what he would see is the tip of the base of his triangle. So he set it up that if he saw the tip of the base of the triangle from his view up on top, that means the triangle, the bottom of the triangle must be 12 inches. So using different angles, you can set it up where the point that you're going to focus on, depending on the angle of the scope relative to the ground or relative to the vertical, that the point that it'll show you is exactly 2,000 amas away. And that's
but he'd have to be 8,000 amas up in the sky to do that.
Well, if he's going to use a 90-degree angle, if he used a much less steep
then
angle,
you don't have the hypotenuse thing to know. Then you can't measure that.
You always have the hypotenuse, except the base would be much
only
longer.
If it's a right angle.
I'm sorry?
Only if it's a right angle.
Yeah, but the vertical could be 10 feet, and the horizontal could be 4,000 feet, and you still have your hypotenuse. But he probably had to climb up to, it's called the crux bay. What's it called? That thing all the way on top of the tower. The crow's nest, I think it's called. The lookout at the top of the mast.
Right.
Yeah, he probably had to go up pretty high. And using the exact angle, he was able to see exactly where 2,000 amas was. And now we're going to get advice on measurement. If you want to know how deep a certain cavern is, canyon is, maybe Shreferis should bring this tool. You look through it, and he'll be able to tell again using this formula. But right to lay the kamagavi decal. What if you want to know how tall a palm tree is, but you don't want to climb it? It's very tall, and you don't know how to climb. So what you do is very simple. I remember when I was a child walking home from shul Friday night with my father. As you were walking in between the telephone poles, you pass the telephone pole, and your shadow would be in front of you. It would be very short. And as you move further and further away from the pole, your shadow gets longer and longer. And then when you hit the next telephone pole, now your shadow shows up behind you, right? We all remember looking at that, feeling so tall. As little kids, we would feel so tall. So if you want to measure a decal, you do the same thing. But you use moeded kemasai, you measure your height. So let's say you're 5 feet, and then you measure the height, the length of the shade of the tree. So let's say I'm 5 feet, and the length of the shade of the tree is 20 feet. And then you measure your height, the length of your shadow, let's say it's 10 feet. So if your shadow is 10 feet and the shadow of the tree is 20 feet, if you're actually 5 feet, it would mean that the tree is 10 feet. And that's how you would know. The Yeda Kama Goy Vishal Decal. There's a fresh grave. Someone just died, and they made a caver. Usually, the sand gets piled up in a heap on top of the caver. It's not flush to the ground. So when the sun is shining at an angle, that heap will actually create shade on either side of it, depending on where the sun is. The problem is that shade, especially the shade in the morning, around the 4th hour, is very cool and refreshing, and animals will come and shelter under that shade. Once they're there, they'll sniff that there's a body, and they'll dig it up and eat the body. So you don't want animals. You need some way to get rid of animals from the vicinity of the caver. So what you do is take a post and put it into the caver 4 hours in the day. So let's say if 7 is the day, 11 o'clock, and see the exact angle of the shade. And then what you do is you trim the pile on top of the caver so that it should no longer obstruct the sun. And this way the sun will light up that area that would have otherwise been shaded, which means there's no more place for any animals to hide because there's no shade anymore made from this caver. So you create an angle in such a way that it will not block the sun at all. Now Rashi asks, well, what about in the afternoon? The sun's going to be on the other side. So Rashi says two things. Either once the animals are not happy there in the morning, they find somewhere else to go. The other answer he says is in the afternoon it's really hot, and even the shade doesn't really give the animal an enjoyable place to relax. It's only in the morning where they're looking. Nechemia had a case like in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah we had, if someone had a ruach run, he lost his mind, and suddenly he finds himself out of the tchum, he only has dalet amas. So Nechemia b'Rei Chaniloi Meshachli Shmaitza, he was orangutan in the sugya, and he was walking, and he didn't realize where he was going, and all of a sudden he became aware that he was out of the tchum, and now he's stuck. He can't come back in. He's stuck in his dalet amas. But not in chutz tchum. So only Reb Chisda must have had an erev tchumen that allowed him to be both at the place where Reb Nechemia got stranded and back in the city. So Reb Chisda came to Reb Nachman to report that Nechemia Talmidach Shari B'tzar. Your Talmud Nechemia Nebuch is in trouble. He's stuck out there. So Omar Loi, remember we looked in the Mishnah according to Rabbi Gamliel that if kidnappers kidnap you or a ruach ra got you to go outside the middle of nowhere, you only have dalet amas. But if goyim come afterwards and build a fence around you, then you're allowed to be in the whole area of the fence. Or if goyim put you into a place where there's a fence, you're allowed to go into the whole area. That was the shita of Rabbi Gamliel. So what they wanted to do for him is they wanted to make a human fence. And take a whole bunch of people and have them line up on either side to make a corridor to him and then behind him. And so then basically they've included him now into the tchum. And then he could come in. Now, of course, those people had also had an erev tchumen to be able to be there. So Yosef Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak Achari the Rava. Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak was sitting behind Rava in yeshiva. The Yosef Rava came to Reb Nachman, and the great Reb Nachman bar Yaakov was the Rebbe in front. And Amalei Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak Rava. Reb Yaakov bar Yitzchak asked Rava, "My kamaboy Reb Chisda, what is the whole shaila here, Reb Chisda, to do this? If they had enough people to create a complete corridor all the way from the city to Reb Nechemia and around him, so then what's the shaila here? The whole shaila is could you rely on the heter of Gamliel? Because the Chachamim in the Mishnah argued and said, no, you only have dalet amas, no matter what type of fence is there, it doesn't matter. You only have dalet amas. So maybe that was the shaila that coming by the Hilchos Reb Gamliel. Maybe that was the shaila. Is that what the shaila was? Why they were discussing if they can go rescue Reb Nechemia? Dilma, maybe they didn't have enough people to reach all the way back to the city. They were 2 amish short. And if the 2 amish short, there's a gap there. So how is he going to traverse from the area that he's now enclosed in with people to the city? There's a 2 amma gap where he doesn't have a border. So Zok Gemara, maybe that's the case. Where they were 2 amish short. Become a boile Allah Krab Eliezer or Ein Allah Krab Eliezer. And the shaila was, there's a Mishnah on Nun Bey that we're going to learn later. Rabbi Eliezer holds if you're within 2 amis, that's good enough. You can jump that gap because you're close enough that you can sit within the tchum. And that was the whole shaila. So it's poshut to say that our case with Rabbi Nechemia was exactly that there weren't enough people to get all the way back to the city. There's a gap. And I'll tell you how I can prove it to you. If there was enough people to reach all the way back to the city, mighty boile. Why would he be declaring if the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel? Rav already passed in halacha Rabbi Gamliel, but dear V'soyer. So it doesn't make sense that they go ask Rabbi Nachman what to do. They know the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel. And that's the question they have to ask is, can we allow Rabbi Nechemia to jump that gap between where the people surrounded him and where the city is? And Dekanami, from the wording used to describe the occurrence, it makes sense to say that was the question. It says that they told him, let them take people, surround him, and then surround them with people, and they'll come in. If the people reach the city, he's in already. The moment they make this boundary around him, so it's sort of extended the walls of the city, and then he's there. The fact is that the economist means there's another step to overcome. Even after you have the people, you still have to be able to traverse those two amas. Zok the Gemara, Dekanami, Dekamar le yikonis. My yikonis. What do you mean you come in? Lab beloy mechitza. It must mean that there was no mechitza for those last two amas, and the yikonis means is he can traverse that area. Okay, let's stop here. We'll stop here. Have an easy fast. And this now that we're in a new year, it should be a year of only brachas and success.
Amen. Shkoyach, Yosy. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.